So like I said, we'll be back on campus on the 19th, and the group that hasn't done the oil changes, we'll go right into that on Monday. Let's see here. I want to share my screen real quick. I want you guys to take a look at the at this PowerPoint. I'm going to quickly go through this, and then I am also going to record a Honda video. Let me see if I can get this thing to come up. So there is this Honda video. I'm not going to record the whole thing. I'm just going to record these the first two sections here. Basically oil functions and the system and components. So I'm going to post that up into Canvas. That way you guys can take a look at it. I know a number of you have already completed the Chapter 5 quiz and turned everything in. That's fine. This is just additional information that I want you guys to have. Let's see here. Let me come back over here. All right, so some of you guys have already read this stuff, so I apologize if I'm repeating what you've already read. But these are some of the issues that are brought up in this chapter. So the biggest part of oil, or what we use it for, is we need to create this oil film against the compression ring. So if you guys remember taking the small engine apart, it had a pair of compression rings, and then it had this funky little ring called our oil control ring. And essentially, all three pieces, the rings themselves, are going to be gliding on a film of oil. And that is required to not only prevent the cylinder from wearing out, but it's also required to make a tight seal from the compression ring onto the cylinder. And so, in addition, we're also going to have a connecting rod bearing here, and the bearing here is a main bearing. And basically what we're going to do is we are going to have these bearings not be in actual contact with each other. We are going to use the oil as a hydraulic fluid. And just like when we're lifting the car up on the rack, we're using a hydraulics to achieve that. We're essentially going to hydraulically suspend the crankshaft and the connecting rod on a thin layer of pressurized oil. So when you take a look at the Honda video, I think that's going to make more sense. So also it's going to cool, clean, and like I was just saying, that it's going to help seal up the piston rings to the cylinder. Okay, so this is where we need to take a look at some of these oil ratings. So if you look at a bottle, you're going to find the API service rating, and they've come in different letters. They started with the letter A, and over time we've gone A, B, C, D, and then they've doubled up. So now we're on this SN, and I can't remember exactly what the next number is, but we're beyond the SN rating now. Also, you're going to see that we have an SAE. So API first stands for the American Petroleum Institute, and then SAE is going to be the Society of Automotive Engineers. And these are just a couple of different ratings that we have for engine oil. Okay, so since we have these different SAE ratings, those of you that have already done the oil changes, you saw that our Toyota Corollas had, we could run a 5W20 or a 0W20. And those of you that have already done the oil change, I was talking about how, you know, if we were in Arizona, where it's 100 degrees all day long for weeks on end for the whole summer, we would definitely want to use a thicker oil, so like a 5W20. And those oils are going to be used when there's higher ambient temperatures. When it's cold outside, or we're in an area like San Diego, we don't get that cold. But if we were up like in North Dakota or Montana or something like that, we definitely want to use a thinner oil because the ambient temperature outside is cold, and we need to have the oil be able to flow when it's cold outside before the engine oil is hot. So I've never had to live in a cold climate, and I'm really happy about that. But some of you may have come from a colder climate where you actually had to plug your car in at night to keep the engine warm. I don't know if anybody has experienced that, but if you have, maybe you could throw something in the chat, like, yes, I have done that. So let's see here. So do me a favor, if you guys can put your comments in here in the chat, that would be great. Like, yes, how about live in a cold climate? So hopefully you guys can see that in the chat. I'm just putting something out there. Just trying to be a little more interactive with you guys instead of me just talking to the camera. So anyways, you can see here that we have two different types of engines that are available. Gas engine, which is spark ignition, or SI, and then we have diesel engines that are compression ignition. So, and you can see they have a different API rating, CK-4, and then there's a new one, FA-4. This newer diesel engine oil is super thin, and if you put that oil in an older diesel engine, you're going to blow it up. So super important that you guys use the correct oil for the vehicle, okay? Yeah, it must be nice. Santa Cruz, 70 all year round, yes. We don't have to deal, especially here in San Diego, we don't have to deal with any crazy, typically we don't have to deal with any crazy weather. Let's see here. Move on to the next one here. Come on. All right, so if you see that it has this energy conserving label here, basically the engine oil is so thin that it doesn't take a lot of horsepower, or it doesn't drag on the engine so much. So the thicker the oil, the more difficult it is the engine to pump that oil, and it costs fuel economy. So if you have a thin oil, it's considered energy conserving because it takes less energy to pump that oil through the motor. So I'm seeing, Justin, you lived in Virginia, and I'm sure you don't have to go very far for it to get cold there too. Let's see here. So as oils have become more highly engineered, it used to be that you would have a choice. First of all, in older cars, synthetics weren't really around, right? And then here we are in the early 2000s. Some cars were designed to operate using synthetics, and you could use synthetic, you could basically go from a synthetic to a regular mineral oil, and vice versa. You go back and forth. Now, if you buy a brand new car, you don't have a choice. You have to use a synthetic because these cars are using engine oils that are super thin, like our Toyotas, 0W20. You can't buy that in a regular mineral oil. You're going to have to buy a synthetic to get down to that lower viscosity. And with those lower viscosities, they are going to get better fuel economy because they're really thin. All right, so here's the ILSAC. These guys were created by Japanese and American automotive manufacturers. They're just another layer of oil ratings that you might find on the bottle. This is not something that we use all that often, but you're definitely going to find the SAE rating, which is the viscosity of your oil, and then you're also going to have to take a look at the API rating to make sure you have the right API rating. And this is very, very important for diesel engines, especially. Let's see here. And then, of course, Europe's got their own, and then the manufacturers have their own specifications. Since they are the ones that design the engines, they will have their own specification for their engines. And then somebody like Castrol or Valvoline or Mobil will make or design an oil that meets or exceeds these specifications from the engine manufacturer. Let's see here. These are all the different additives that are in our oil. I'm not going to read those to you, but please take a look at them. They're in your book. Okay, of course we have conventional, synthetic, and semi-synthetic. It's that deal that's right in between, trying to get that synthetic blend. Let's see here. So essentially, when they're talking about conventional engine oil, it's basically crude oil that's been refined into a base oil, and it's typically using heat to achieve that, and then they're going to add the additives. And so in a conventional oil, the molecular structure of the oil is not uniform, and this is the reason why you'd want to use a synthetic. You know, when we had engines that were kind of sloppy inside, having big engine clearances, it didn't really matter. You could use a conventional oil and it worked just fine. But as engines have gotten tighter, meaning that the bearing clearances are very, very tight, very close, we're pretty much at the point where we have to use a synthetic because we can't make the conventional oils thin enough to be stable. So we had to come up with these synthetic molecules, which basically we're going to use chemical engineering to create these different types of base oils or synthetic base oils. So here are some advantages of synthetic oil. They all have these great advantages, except that it's a higher cost. Some manufacturer warranties require that you're going to use regular oil change intervals that reflect conventional oil use. So if you're gonna switch up from a car that was using conventional oil to synthetic, it would be advantageous to you to actually extend out the time that you drive the car before changing the oil again. And I think that's really the biggest advantage to synthetic oil, is that you can have a car that you don't have to change the oil every 3 months. You just do it every year or every 6 months, depending on how many miles you drive. If you guys have any questions, please, throw it in the chat. You can interrupt me. Please don't be afraid to interact with me. Let's see here. These semi-synthetics, I think this is just, it's kind of like mid-grade gas. It doesn't really serve a purpose, except that it makes you feel better that you're getting some synthetic in there, but it's not as expensive. I just don't see the advantage to using this. Come on. Okay, oil filters. This is a metal can oil filter. Those of you that have already done the oil change on our Toyotas, we don't have this type of oil filter. These are going away. We are down to just using the cartridge. So the paper filter that's inside of these is basically now all that we're changing, and then it's housed in a plastic filter housing. And so since we're going to this synthetic oil, for example, Honda has this oil life monitoring system where they will change just the filter. I mean, it's pretty crazy. The oil is supposedly will last long enough where, you've driven the car for 6 months, they'll change just the oil filter and top off the oil. And then you keep driving on that oil that's been in the car for 6 months, and you drive it for another 6 months to go a whole year on an oil change. So this is pretty commonplace now. We're not changing the oil as often. And instead of saying that you got to change the oil every 3 months or 3,000 miles, now we're using this oil life monitoring system that's built into the car. So you can see here, how often are you going to change the oil? Well, if you're in this extreme category, basically 3,000 to 5,000 miles. I'll be honest, all my cars, they pretty much get an oil change every 5,000 miles. I'll do an oil change and I'll rotate the tires. That's what I do every 5,000 miles. Don't worry about this changing the oil filter. This is, there's one question on the essay portion. Please give me a couple steps out of this. But that's pretty much where we're at here for this chapter. It's very simple. And again, I am going to right now record this Honda video, and I'm going to post it along with this video that we're creating right now, so that you guys have that. So if you guys have any questions, please let me know. Let's see here. So those of you that are here, I'm not going to share this screen with you. I have everybody's grades up. Let's see here. So let me tell you where your grade needs, oops, let me sort this high to low. The high score in the class right now is 386 points. So a passing grade in here, so 386 times 0.7, oops, 386 times 0.7. So to have a C grade or higher, you need to be at 270 points. That's great because there's only 1, 2, 3 people in here who are not passing the class. So if you are one of these people that are below 270 points, and today is Monday, October 12th. So if you are below 270 points, you need to get some work done. The person who has 386 points is actually missing one test. So those points are going to go up. This person is going to be at 400 points here and over 400 points in just a minute. So please make sure that you guys get this stuff done. Is there anybody in here who is having a problem with Mopar cap? Juan, were you able to get into the Mopar cap?
No, I wasn't actually. Haven't been able to get onto Mopar.
Did I spoke with Marty and he said he was going to send work on it. Did you receive anything from Marty?
That I have noticed. No, I've tried checking my spam,